Hi, my name's Lily and welcome to Small Talk. I've just finished watching Boris Johnson's press conference, his daily coronavirus press conferences that he's started, and I wanted to give you my thoughts and some analysis. I have written notes because I wanted to get it out quickly, but I also wanted to make sure that I kept all the information down, because this is something where there has been just so much information. It's rapidly changing every single day. We hear stories about people in other countries. So I want to make sure that I'm helping things seem easier rather than contributing to the confusion. I'm based in Barcelona, so I'm actually experiencing the lockdown at the moment. I am in day 3 of sort of absolute quarantine, where we're only allowed to go to the supermarket or to the pharmacy, and I'm still doing okay. But some of my housemates, not so much. Anyway, you can check out how I feel about that. I'll put a video up for you, and I'll keep on updating with that. So let's talk a little bit about the rest of Europe. The rest of Europe seems to have gone the way now of Italy. Well, Spain was the first to follow suit. So Italy has been shut down for, I think it's almost a week now. And Spain, we've done 3 days. France announced yesterday that they were going into complete lockdown. And Macron announced that this was sort of a situation of war and that he had drafted in the military. Don't know why that's totally necessary. Maybe it's a French thing. But I have just seen as well a visual online which shows that actually across Europe now, at least in terms of schools, there are at least full closure in most, or total closure in most European countries. There are 2 countries, Iceland and Sweden, that are doing partial closure. And then there are, everything's in red and yellow. And then there are 2 countries that are in grey that are not doing any closures. And that is the UK and Belarus. And I've got to be honest, it is a little jarring to see, you've got the whole of Europe moving in one direction and then the UK completely doing their own thing. And that has been a huge criticism of the government in the last week and in the last few days, was that, what was their strategy? Why was it so different to what the rest of Europe was doing? And then, okay, even if we diverge from Europe, then why is it so different to what the WHO, the World Health Organization, is advising that people do? And I think that pressure mounted on the government to abandon its original policy, or at least to start to engage with the next phase of their plan, as they tried to say it. I don't know how much things are a U-turn or whether it was actually meant to go that way, but let's talk about where we've come from. It's true that the UK has seen a slower growth of cases than places like Spain or Italy, but this doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. This is just sort of they're a little bit behind in the trajectory. So, cases are going to increase and we're going to start seeing double figures, sort of cases doubling every single day as what happened here. So while the rest of Europe moved into sort of containment and suppression, the UK was adopting a policy of mitigation. And this, we don't hear these 2 words anymore, but we did hear them a lot before the weekend, and you would have seen it in the news, herd immunity. So I think there was an idea from advisors to the UK government and the UK position was to try to build enough resistance and immunity within the population with this first hit of coronavirus, or COVID-19, to mitigate against a second wave, which they believed would come possibly around the winter flu time, which would completely demolish the NHS and cause a huge disaster. So they were going against mitigation and building something called herd immunity. Now, if you spend any time on Twitter, that meant that everybody was saying, hey, if you do the facts, if we say the percentage of people infected that die is this percent, to build herd immunity is 60% of a population. So 60% population of the UK, and then the percentage of that needed to have caught it would be 60, and then the percentage of that who could pass away, sadly, ended up being something like 500,000 people. Now, I'm not very good with numbers, which is why that bit was a bit confused. But people said, this isn't a price you can pay. Or at least if this was going to have been the government's plan, you can't come out and say oh yeah, we're sort of doing a massive behavioural science experiment on the population and we're going to see if only, the populations that are less vulnerable get it, and then that protects the more vulnerable, you know. So you don't hear that anymore, because then that was said to be a cornerstone of the government's plan in, you know, Mr. Sir Valance, who's the chief advisor on this. He was briefing the press that this was part of the plan, and then a day later, Matt Hancock, the health secretary, is like, no, herd immunity is not part of the plan, because, oh, sorry, I'm touching that, because it sounds pretty, I don't know, yeah, pretty callous, I guess, and, you know, the population felt that. So then we have had, the other thing was that there was drip feeding to the press over the weekend. So when the UK election back in December, you may have seen like all of these things like, oh, government sources say, and government sources say that, without it being attributed to sort of an actual name. So without it being, you know, oh, Boris Johnson says, or Dominic Cummings says, or Matt Hancock, health secretary says, it would be like sources. And okay, fair, you know, in times of war and peace, like with elections, but when this is a national security that goes above politicking, people were furious. You know, major broadcasters, really respected reporters like Andrew Neil were coming out and saying, if this is the case, because what was being briefed was that over 70-year-olds would be told to self-isolate. So he said, if this is the case, if this is going to be a policy in the coming days, then we need it to be officially from the Prime Minister or from the head of government coming to the public and addressing them in the way they would in any national crisis, or they should in any national crisis. So after the weekend, we got told, I think on Sunday night, that there would be national coronavirus briefings every day from Boris Johnson, flanked by his advisors, to sort of start making that communication clear. You know, South Korea has been used as an example of how a country can deal with this successfully. And they said that their model was based on transparency of the government and clear communication, where everything was coordinated and really clear. And, you know, no matter what the UK was trying to do, what the UK government was trying to do, I'm not going to give my opinion on that because I'm not a scientist. It was muddled, and people are still starting with their contingency plans. People are acting in different ways. There's no uniformity, and I will give my opinion here, and I don't know how that is supposed to work in a national crisis. So we had that. Now, yesterday in the update, it was like the most drastic or draconian measures announced, but this is key. None of them were sort of legally enforced. So, for example, here in Barcelona, I'm not allowed out, and there will be police patrolling, and I have to go to the supermarket, and we can only go one at a time. And at the supermarket, they control you coming in and out, and I know that I'm legally required to stay at home. I'm in a state of emergency. They've declared a state of emergency, and have to stay here. Now, mark this difference with what the UK government did yesterday. Johnson came along and said that he was urging, bars and pubs and clubs to close, and for people to self-isolate as much as possible, and for, if you could, to work at home, and to protect the elderly and vulnerable populations. Now, if the onus is on people to stay home from work, and the onus is on businesses to shutter, but without any of the legal requirements, and therefore not any of the legal protections, like that was, I don't know. I was a little speechless, because that meant that what businesses were having to do is shutter their doors, especially in the hospitality sector, so pubs and restaurants and bars. But because they're not legally required to do so, that voids their insurance. So you start to see that instead of being given clear, direct instructions, it's almost like the government was using legal speak to allow, is it to allow insurance companies off the hook? Is it to, what was it? Well, why are we giving this choice still to individuals and to businesses? We need to have a nationwide plan, because as government admits, we're not yet at the numbers of the rest of Europe, but we're entering, he kept on repeating today, we are entering the fast-paced period. We are entering the period where it goes, day to day, the situation changes and becomes more drastic. And, you've got schools today voluntarily closing themselves through conscience. I mean, it's a little bit strange on the outside because, I am a Brit, but I'm a Brit abroad and I'm experiencing it here in Spain. And I don't know, it's just a very, very different message. For example, here, the government has, public health has seized control of private hospitals to deal with the crisis. This is a time of war, as people keep on saying. The enemy is a virus, but it's still the same sort of emergency measures. In the UK, we are paying private hospitals for beds to an amount of something like 2 million a day. These are just some of the examples of what's going on. So today, back to what the update was from Boris Johnson. Again, nobody is legally required to do anything. So it seems like it's still hold off. He said that, schools, they're ready for those measures. They will start to come out. Things will start to change. But for now, it's sort of like, stay where you are, yeah? But they had to come out with some economic measures, okay? So what he said is he started his press conference saying that, he wants to talk about the overall plan that has been, because I guess that they've been seen to now have two plans and they need to bridge them together. That may not be the case. I don't want to say that they did have two plans, but it's just messaging has been really bad. Anyway, so the overall plan apparently was to stop the spread in order to not overwhelm the NHS and have complete failure of our public health system. So that is where they're clearly alluding to this sort of herd immunity idea that has been dropped. And he says, though, without drastic action, things are going to get worse. So that is encouraging people to take this drastic action themselves and also warning them that at some point the state will intervene, I imagine, and enforce it. He also says that this is sort of worldwide and it's not country specific. Now, this is key because he talks about it's not a problem with health systems, okay? Health systems in any part of the world. I think that maybe this is possibly covering for the flack that, has been the NHS has been getting, or the funding of the NHS, because we do have a seriously underfunded public health system. No matter what you think about the ideology behind that, the numbers speak for themselves in public health and in healthcare, itself. Amongst our peers, Spain, France, Germany, Italy, we have the lowest beds per capita, lowest hospital beds per capita than the rest of them. So he's here clearly trying to say, we are engaging this as a world, it's not to pick apart each other's public health systems, but I think that's kind of defensive, or to protect against the fact that, the Tories have been in charge for the last 10 years, and this virus is coming and it directly impacts public health, public services, public institutions, social security, all of the things that really are not their favourite part. They are way more focused on the business side, and then now business isn't able to operate and they're coming for the bailouts as well. What else? Anyway, so he outlines 5 things that are in the overall plan. So first of all, we have to make these drastic changes. We may have to go further and faster than before. But again, we're not really being told anything concrete. Second, he is going to increase the capacity of the NHS. That means beds. That means, they have actually, I saw that they have cancelled non-urgent operations, which is freeing up something like 30,000 beds. Cool. He says that we are going to number 3 is we need to invest in research. We need to be researching this disease. We need to be tackling it, blah, blah, blah. And number 4, which is the important one, we need to act like a wartime government and support the economy as it needs. And this is where he was going to plan over to hand over to the Chancellor, and he did. And then we heard what's going to happen to the economy. And then the 5th thing was strengthen institutions. I don't really know what that means. Anyway, so Rishi Sunak, who's the Chancellor, he came along. Now, remember that we had a budget a week ago in the UK. After not having a proper budget for a long time, we had a budget for a week ago. We may as well just throw that in the trash. That is gone. Okay, everything has changed. And I think he only outlined 1 billion in the budget before for coronavirus. That's now been bumped up to 330 something billion relief fund. So money does grow on trees. Anyway, at the moment, the economic packages, it looks like they've tried to answer some of the problems because, for example, in Italy, they've frozen mortgage payments, they've frozen utility bills. In France, they've said that the entire economy will be protected. There is nobody who is going to be harmed. Like I said, in Spain, they have seized the private means. And in the UK, we're begging private companies to make us ventilators and saying we will pay whatever it takes. And we're also paying private companies to use the beds in a health service. So I don't know, there has been suddenly this huge gulf between the way our governments approach these crises and who pays for them. So in the UK, there has been huge, especially after yesterday, asking the public and businesses to do something, but not compensating them for it, not protecting them. So we had very much a response from Rishi. Now, his response is mainly to do with businesses, okay? So it was more for like business owners and homeowners. There's going to be a mortgage holiday for people who need it, so you don't have to pay mortgages for a while. I mean, holiday is a kind of optimistic exaggerated word to use, but whatever. There's also going to be loans and grants to businesses, but I don't know. I don't know much about business. Someone can tell me about the figures that were announced, and if any business owner is watching this, how they feel protected by the government or not, how they feel, whether they'll be able to pay it back. I know that there's a 25,000 grant going to hospitality, I think, businesses to sort of bridge the gap. But 25,000, I don't know how much that is in real terms for a business, especially, I don't know, a restaurant or something like that. Now, the criticism from this update, now, obviously it was only half an hour ago or something, so I haven't got all of it up to date, but this is just to kind of let you know where we've been at, what was happening. But the criticism of this latest update is that there's nothing in there for renters, and crucially, there's nothing about statutory sick pay or freelancers or anybody who is going to have to be at home, or if the government is asking us to self-isolate, who is protecting the individuals? Statutory sick pay is something like £90 or 90 something pounds a week. Now, low income earners, many of the frontline people that we are relying to be there in this crisis, the only people in Spain that are still, on the front line are public health workers, of course, and supermarket workers. They are there wearing the mask and having the gloves, and they are there making sure that everybody is getting their food and they have a shop to come to. So the very people that we're relying on are the very people who, if they do fall sick or if they are being asked to stay at home, who's protecting them? Anyway, I'll have to look more at the details because this got long. But please tell me what you think, how you feel being in the UK, how you feel with the response, whether you know what you're supposed to do, whether you have a plan, whether you have questions or anything, what you want to see from tomorrow's update. And as always, please give me a like and give me a subscribe because I'm in quarantine and I have nothing to do. So it would be great to make some more politics videos. For now, don't forget to wash your hands, don't cough on people, save masks for people in healthcare professions. Don't overbuy, it's not cool and it's not okay. And protect the elderly and immunocompromised. Thanks very much and stay safe.